Hi, Lifting Leaders podcast listeners. Welcome back. Today, we're continuing our special series focused on coaches and how their work helps to make a better world.
As many of you know, both of us are certified leadership coaches through the Hudson Institute of Coaching and professional certified coaches through the International Coaching Federation.
What you might not know is that our passion for coaching and its positive impact on others led us to join the ICF Washington State Chapter Leadership Board. This year, I'm honored to serve as the president, and Tricia is the director of volunteer services.
Over the past several years, we've met some truly amazing coaches. Their diverse and impactful work has inspired us so much that we wanted to showcase just a few of these incredible individuals.
Some of these coaches we've met through our work with ICF Washington, and others through associations like Hudson. We hope you find their stories as inspiring as we do.
What we know for sure is that if you utilize your strengths, follow your passion, and keep service to others as a guiding principle, you can make a positive difference in the world, no matter what career you choose. And a good career coach can certainly help with that.
That's for sure.
So we have an opportunity today. We just found out something pretty amazing, and so we're going to do an encore episode. We are bringing back an episode that we did last year, just a little earlier last year than we are
Episode
right
71.
now. Oh, right, with Amy Yip. Tell us a little bit about Amy, Crystal.
Yeah, I'm really excited. So Amy actually went through the Hudson program with Tricia and I.
Yeah.
So excited about that. So she just really took off after she went through Hudson. And of course, she was a well-accomplished person before she even went through the coaching program. But Amy is a 2-time TEDx speaker, award-winning author. She is ICF certified as a PCC coach, professional certified coach. She is actually faculty now on the Hudson Institute of Coaching leadership teaching group. She's also a certified positive intelligence coach and a certified somatic coach. She works with women of color leaders to strengthen their mental fitness, heal intergenerational wounds, find their voice, and the courage to speak up and have agency to let go of all the shoulds so that they can be the author of their own life stories. Really amazing, purposeful work.
It really is. And, it's so appropriate that we are bringing back this episode with Amy. We didn't have the luxury of having her back on live with us today, but we definitely want to call out the fact that, number one, she is an amazing coach. And she's not just, she doesn't just do any kind of coaching. She really does target specific areas, which makes her, a niche coach, right?
That's right. Yeah.
But one thing that we really want to call out, because we just learned this, is that her book that came out last year, Unfinished Business, has just been awarded the Independent Authors Network Book of the Year Award for Outstanding Nonfiction.
Woohoo!
Yeah, no kidding. And, this book is amazing. It's really good. I read it. I first skimmed it so that we could interview, and then I read it. I went back and I really, did a deep dive into the book, and I love this book. I love the way she wrote it. I love the format. It's just a really beautiful book. And it's all about growing up as a first-generational Asian American woman with immigrant parents who raised their children with their own values, and her way of navigating life in the U.S. with parents who did not really speak English, and making her way in the world. And she's certainly doing that with gusto. I think it's wonderful. So I'm excited that we're going to get a chance to hear her again today, and we hope that you as listeners really do enjoy this time.
Yeah, you'll get a lot out of it. We did it the first time through, and we know we've got a lot of new listeners as well. And even if you've heard this one before, we hope that you'll listen to it again and really glean maybe some new gems out of it.
Enjoy.
Welcome to Lifting Leaders Podcast, where we are unleashing leader possibilities to make a better world. I'm Crystal Roberts, and together with Tricia Ryan, we're diving deeper into some of the complexities of the world's most critical challenges and exploring innovative ways of navigating through them.
Through interviews with experts and leaders just like you, we're exploring what it takes to thrive as a leader today and examining new ways of thinking about how to creatively lead into a more equitable, socially responsible, and sustainable future. and the future starts now. Hi, Crystal. How are you?
I'm great. How are you doing, Trisha?
I'm doing great. It's fall. It's maybe almost fall. Well, it is fall.
Yeah, I love the crisp mornings.
I do too.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
It's about
here.
time. I don't know. I think living in the Pacific Northwest, when we hit the new season, the day we hit the new season starts.
Yep.
So if they say the fall leaves are coming on the first day of fall, they're here on the first day of fall.
Yeah.
Not before, not after, on the first day. I love it. It's just, it makes me look forward to the next season and the next season. Probably not the snow season for some, but I like it. Mm-hmm. Anyway, I am so excited today that we have our guest with us, somebody who we both know, and we both had the privilege of interviewing a couple of years ago when we had another podcast. On a personal note, I have been a true fan of this person. She's an amazing woman, and I've known her since we went through Hudson Institute together, and we were in the same cohort for 9 months. It was pretty amazing. Pretty amazing. Her dynamic energy and focus have catapulted her career and helped her become an engaging voice for empowering AAPI women today, which we're going to hear a lot more about, I hope. Welcome, Amy Yip. Hi.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Before we go into all of our questions today, I'm going to talk a little bit about you. Amy is a somatic life transformation and mental fitness coach, keynote speaker, author, and self-confidence trainer. She works with women of color leaders to strengthen their mental fitness, heal intergenerational wounds, find their voice and courage to speak up, and have agency to let go of all the shoulds so they can be the authors of their own life stories. Her mission is to empower AAPI women to be seen, to be heard, and to F-bombing, rock the boat. Amy just launched her first best-selling book, Unfinished Business, Breaking Down the Great Wall Between Adult Child and Immigrant Parents. Amy is an International Coach Federation professional certified coach, a certified Hudson Institute coach, a certified Strozzi Institute somatic coach, and a pioneer mental fitness coach certified through Positive Intelligence. We love Shirzad. Her degrees include MBA through UCLA Anderson School of Management, a BS in Computer Science, and a BA in Communication at University of Maryland. Amy, her amazing husband Greg, and their toddler Logan, cutest kid ever, and I mean that, call Maryland their home. Welcome, Amy. We're really happy to have you here today.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm so happy that we get to see you again on the podcast. And like we said, it was on a previous podcast that we had you join us. But it's really fun to see all of the amazing things that you have done since we've talked with you. And I know Trisha keeps up with you through social media. I've also, but to be able to talk to you live about it is really fun.
Yeah, it's way better than a one-liner, you know?
Yes, definitely better than one-liners and likes and hearts on social media.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you haven't done this on this podcast. So we're going to ask you a question that we ask all of our guests. And that is, Amy, tell us your story.
Yeah, one of my favorite questions. So I grew up in a house with immigrant parents. My parents came to the U.S. in 1978 with $1,700 in their pockets and had to leave my two sisters behind in Hong Kong while they established their roots here. My middle sister was 2 at the time, and then my older sister was 7. So imagine leaving your children behind, coming to the U.S., not knowing when you can bring them back to the U.S. They had no plans of having a third child, and then my mother got pregnant, and she said, "Oh, what do we do?" My dad, being a very, very traditional Chinese man, really wanted a son. So he said to my mother, "We have 2 daughters. This one has to be the boy." Clearly, he was wrong. Out I came, a very vibrant, loud, excited child. And my dad always tells me that when I came out, he fainted when he saw me.
Oh, no.
He was just that excited, right?
Yeah, that's what I always say to my joke. And I'm like, "Oh, yeah, you were just so excited at what a wonderful third daughter you got. So growing up in a very, very traditional Chinese household, there were a lot of different expectations on me to do well, become a doctor, lawyer, engineer, to move up that corporate ladder, get that next title, that next salary increase, the promotion, all those things that we're supposed to do.
Yeah.
So imagine in January 2020, when I sold all my belongings in my New York City apartment, left my corporate job at Google, and took a one-way flight to Ghana with my husband. My parents were not happy, especially my dad, who had been handing out my Google business cards to
Oh.
everyone he knew. He was like, what am I going to do now? What will I tell people? So, I had thought that I had disappointed my parents again by doing another thing that they were not happy about. When we got to Ghana, there was that little thing that happened in 2020. Don't know if you remember it. It was called COVID. And so borders in Ghana ended up closing. Our original plan was we would volunteer at the breast cancer nonprofit for just a few months and then go travel the world, which is this huge dream of ours. And then borders closed. So we ended up stuck in Ghana for 7 months.
Wow.
And when borders finally reopened, we started just living and working nomadically. And that was so much fun, and also very, very eye-opening. And the ironic part of my story, or maybe it's heartwarming, however you want to look at it, is that the one thing that really, really held me back from leaving, aside from my parents' expectations and their approval, is that I was in my late 30s and everyone was telling me, you need to have babies, you've got to start a family, your eggs are rotting. Someone actually said that to me. And, I had felt all this pressure. So Greg and I had our embryos frozen. And then there was this mishap at the storage facility where they lost power and couldn't tell us the viability. And so that whole incident had really started my journey of self-help. It's what got me into coaching to begin with. But that was a big pivotal moment. And so the reason I ended up coming back was because I got pregnant naturally. Right. And so it's like this real weird circle of life and things just happening. So I got pregnant overseas, returned back, and this was in the midst of writing my book. And originally we had thought about moving to the West Coast because I'm not a fan of cold, snow, rain, none of that stuff. We were looking at the West Coast, and then I had this moment, and at this time I had already been having these conversations with my parents. I had this moment and I said, I need to be close to my parents. I need my mom when I have this baby. So now we live 10 minutes away from my parents, and we've been back for 2 years. Our last interview was actually, I think, like a week after I had just landed back in the US.
Yes, it was.
Wow. Yeah. Love that. Such a journey. Yeah. So moving on to your book now, you have written a book and it's out. So exciting. When this episode drops, you will have actually already had your book launch. And so we're happy to be a part of that. And so in your book, Unfinished Business, you took brave steps to dispel many of the beliefs, the myths you told yourself as you were growing up as a first-generation Asian American girl. What was it like to address your beliefs with your parents? And what surprised you about those interactions?
It was hard. I will say that I spent 40 plus hours in conversations with my parents. The first 25-ish hours were full of tears, anger, resentment. I started these conversations when I was stuck overseas. So a lot of it was on WhatsApp or video. And as soon as I hung up, I would just be crying. I would go to Greg and say, I can't do this anymore. What was I thinking? They're never going to understand me. And what surprised me the most was the evolution. So after those 25 very, very difficult conversations, what surprised me was how things started to shift when I stopped going into these conversations with the intention of, I want my parents to understand me, or I want to change their perspective. I want to change the way they think or do things. And all I did was listen. So when I changed my approach, my dad and my mom started opening up. They started sharing. Probably the most surprising thing was seeing my dad cry. For my entire life, I have never seen him shed a tear, even when my grandparents passed away. Never shed a tear. And he shed a tear when we started talking about men and emotions and why in the Chinese culture, as a man, you're not allowed to cry. You're not supposed to show these like quote unquote weak emotions. And I asked him, did grandfather ever shed a tear? And so he told me the story about when he was young and my grandfather had gone to Hong Kong and left him behind so that he could go establish the family's roots in Hong Kong. And he came back to visit and asked my dad how things were going. And my dad told him a story about how, his own grandmother wasn't letting him eat food that she was cooking and all this. And my grandfather started shedding tears, but he would look away so that my dad wouldn't see it. But my dad clearly still saw it and he'd wipe his tears away. And as my dad told this story, he started tearing up and he said, that's how much your grandfather loved me and cared about me. And he started tearing up and it was just so heartwarming. My mom was like, old man, are you crying? And my dad's like, no, I'm not. He's trying to hide it. And this was when I was already living in Maryland with them. I walked up to my dad, I gave him a hug, and that just released the floodgates and allowed his tears to just stream down. My mom came over, gave him a hug. And so this is like the most affectionate I have seen my parents, and also, emotions for my dad. And it was the most emotional I'd seen him. So that was what surprised me the most through these interactions was how healing it was for them.
It's like getting to know them for the first time, right? It's like you guys are becoming friends at that point, which you probably never thought would happen before that because you didn't think they understood you, right?
Yeah.
It's so interesting.
Yeah. And that's the big message in my book is how do we see our parents as human beings, as people who have hopes and dreams and fears, just like you and I, who want to be loved, who want to be seen, instead of these authority figures from when we were 10.
Yeah.
And if we were able to see them in that way, then we can actually create a different type of relationship with them.
Yeah.
So powerful.
Yeah. The adult to adult relationship.
Yes.
Instead of parent to child. Yeah. Such an important growth opportunity. So necessary as we age.
And yet, for some reason, it seems to be such an uncomfortable shift. It's like we, as the kids, we see our parents up on that pedestal or wherever we put them, and we see ourselves always in our interaction with them until we get to that point where we've shifted our thinking and we can look at them as adults. It took me a long time to do that with my own parents. It's like I was still looking for their approval. I was still looking for all of that validation and all of that, and I never needed it. I actually could have done that all by myself. Pretty interesting.
Yeah, and I love the fact also that you're able to get there before it shifts.
Yes.
Because we go through that other shift later on in our life, right, where we sort of become the parent taking care of our parents. So to be able to have sort of this golden time of adult to adult, it's really special. Yeah.
I love the way you've formatted this book. I really do. I love the memoir part of it, the part where you're really just telling your very personal story and how you then engage that conversation, a date with your parents, if you will, and then you turn that into lessons learned. And I think that to do that with each myth is just amazing to me because it makes it a very easy book to read. And yet, it's a lot of content in this book, right? I can hardly put it down. Last night we just got ours in the mail and I started reading through some of the later chapters and I thought, oh my gosh, I'm probably gonna have to read this twice because it is so rich. There's so much in it, Amy. It's amazing. So you shared in the book your beliefs, your experience, and then you turned to your parents for that reality check. As you were listening to your parents' stories, at what point did you realize that you were on something bigger than a personal quest for your own truths? And how did that impact the conversations you had with them after that?
Yeah.
You kind of started talking about that in the last question, but just unpack it a bit.
I think there was a pivotal moment for me. So during these conversations, I knew that I wanted to document something, especially because I wanted to start a family and I wanted something so that future generations can read about the immigrants who came over to the US that set the foundation for them. So I had recorded the conversations with my parents. And then, as I mentioned, I got pregnant. I moved to the US. I was, so busy trying to establish my roots here, buy furniture, do all those things that I kind of set the book project aside. When I picked it back up, I started listening back to those recordings to kind of check in and see where was I. When I listened to those recordings, my jaw dropped because even though the words that came out of my mouth were not mean, my tone was. And I listened to the way that I was talking to my parents, and there was definitely this, and just expressing my frustrations or my judgments. And this was after I had already given birth. And in my mind, I had this moment of, if Logan grows up and talks to me like that, how would I feel? It would hurt so much. And that was this moment of, I need to approach this differently, and I need to talk to my parents with kindness. How would I want Logan to talk to me one day? I need to talk to them in that way. Because imagine spending your whole life, everything for your child, taking care of them, and then they are just talking to you in this way. It doesn't feel good. And if I were in their shoes, I wouldn't open up to me. I wouldn't be vulnerable and share stuff. So that was a big shift in how I had these conversations with them. And that also made me realize that most people out there probably don't know how they're actually talking to their parents because they're not recording themselves. They probably think, oh, well, I didn't say anything mean. And, everything's just fine. I was fine. It's them that was not nice, that criticized me or whatever it was. And so I started realizing, well, if I didn't know this, and I feel like I've done a lot of self-work and I'm pretty aware. So if I didn't realize this, what would other people out there not be aware of? And that was when I really wanted to put this into this book format to put out into the world. And when I realized this, I went to my parents and my approach completely shifted. And even though they would say things that just pissed me off or annoyed me, I would catch myself and I would imagine Logan responding to me. And I'm like, okay, how do I want Logan to respond? And I'm going to respond in that way to them. And that completely shifted our conversations. That's when my parents started opening up.
Wow, you got a whole new point of reference in Logan, which is pretty amazing, right? Were your parents at all reluctant to be so open with you about the questions you were asking?
Oh, yeah. And my recommendation to everybody that's going through this is warm your parents up. Don't jump in with, what's your biggest regret in life? Because that's a bit deep to go in. So when I first started these conversations, I actually started with questions like, what did you like to do when you were a kid? What was your favorite food to eat? Like those sorts of things. Did you ever go and, I don't know, like go against your parents' wishes and do something that pissed them off? Kind of lighter questions instead of the what's your biggest regret or what's your biggest fear, which is something that requires a lot of vulnerability. We got to that point, but it took a lot of warming up.
Wow. Yep, I can imagine that. As I was reading one of the passages in your book, I was thinking, wow, that conversation would have been really hard to come to I think in anybody's life, if they, depending on the relationship they have with their parents. But they just immediately made me want to ask you that question because it's like, it's hard, from your side. You're trying to write a book. You're trying to get to the bottom for yourself, so that you have some, validation, but also that you feel, your parents a little bit more closely. But if they've experienced your attitudes, you know what I mean, or the way you come across to them over the years, I just was wondering how close or how easy it would be for them to open up to you. So this is great. Thank you.
Yeah.
What was their initial response when you started these conversations?
It was really funny. I was overseas. I got on a WhatsApp call with my dad. And when I asked him, like, can I ask you some questions? I just want to get to know you more about your life. He said, oh, my life's not interesting. I was just a tailor and a restaurant worker, and your mom too. So why don't you ask your uncle his life story? Because he was a lawyer.
Oh, wow.
And that just goes to show how they think about prestige and what is worthy and what is not. And I had to tell him, like, I don't want to know uncle's life. I want to know yours.
Yeah. Love that.
So humble.
The other thing I just wanted to sort of touch back on was how having your son Logan shifted how you saw your parents. And I know for myself that when I had my first child, it was really profound to realize at this really sort of core level that you love this being and they've done nothing to earn it. And that was huge, to just have such deep love for, not that I didn't expect that I would love my baby, but that to understand that my parents loved me like that.
Yep.
Yeah. I didn't have to do anything.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's that. My dad actually said this to me before I got pregnant, because I started this before I even knew I was pregnant. And he always said to me, you will never understand a parent's love until you have children of your own. And in my mind, I was like, of course I understand love. What are you talking about? Of course I get it, And it really was not something I really understood until I had Logan. And similar to you, like, there's this unconditional love for this little being, no matter what.
Yeah. Super powerful. Yeah. So on to the next question. Your book brings to the forefront how multi-generational and cultural differences can greatly impact the mental models that inform the present and future of girls' and women's actions in life. What other myths come to mind that may be holding women back from experiencing their true potential?
One of the biggest myths that I had was that boys are better than girls. And that was from the moment I was born, because my dad fainted. I was supposed to be a boy. And so growing up, my dad constantly told me about what I could or couldn't do. One of the memories that has just been etched in my memory was when I was about 11 and my dad was fixing the doorknob and he couldn't get it working. I turned around. I said, Daddy, do you need help? And he looks at me and says, girls don't do this kind of stuff. And I was so fuming with anger, but I was taught good Chinese girls don't talk back. You're very nice. So I just turned back to the TV. And then he walked upstairs to take a break. I heard the bathroom door slam and I kept looking back at the doorknob. I was like, should I do it? Should I not? And I got up, I started messing with the doorknob and I fixed it.
Oh.
And then I sat back down. He comes down and he goes to it and he's playing with it. He's like, did you fix this? I'm like, yes, that's what girls can do.
Oh.
And then I was like, ooh, he's going to get upset with me. And I turned back to the TV and he was kind of stunned. And then my mom comes out of the kitchen. She was cooking and she was like, old man, are you done with fixing the door? And he's like, oh yeah. And I was like, Mommy, I did it. Daddy said girls couldn't do it and I did it and I proved him wrong. And I was just so excited. And she's like, that's what you get, old man, for telling our daughters that they can't do things.
Oh, good.
And so, yeah, my mom is definitely an advocate of women being independent, having that freedom, believing in yourself, doing your own thing. And so that belief of girls can't do things, it was from a very young age, right? And boys are better than girls. And so for much of my life, I tried to prove my dad wrong. Girls can do things. But I believe that holds so many women back from truly reaching their potential, that they're not as good as men.
Yeah.
And it's, I asked my dad this during the interviews. I said, do you still believe that women are not as good? And he said, well, Grandpa used to say that women, even if they can fly, and in Chinese movies, the old school movies, flying is one of the highest skills that you could have. So he said, even if women can fly, you're still just a woman. That's what grandfather used to say. And my blood just started boiling. I was like, oh, well, what do you believe? And he was like, well, I'm your grandfather's son. And he wouldn't directly answer my question. I'm like, oh, okay. So he
Thanks
still
for your
believes that.
opinion.
Yeah,
Still
exactly.
believes that.
But
Yeah.
he still
Interesting.
believes that.
Yeah.
At the same time, I do know he's very proud of his daughters, and he does, like I say this in the book, where instead of us trying to persuade men or other people of the potential of women, it's show them,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Show them what's possible.
But in saying that, it makes me think about, meetings that I've been to where there have been men and women in the meeting at the table discussing, and women's conversations almost always center around different things. They use words that are not quite as strong or are not quite as empowered, and men just walk right over them, sometimes even just talk over them. And to me, that's not necessarily the man's fault at that point. And it's not really a woman's conscious fault. It's just that they've been conditioned to believe that they should sit back and listen, or they should stop when a man starts to talk over them. They should stop talking and not talk right through. And it undermines everything, right?
Oh, completely. It's the nice girl syndrome.
Yeah.
And I was recently reading about a study that was done on young girls, and the researchers gave them lemonade but put salt in it instead of sugar. They gave it to little boys and little girls. The boys would drink it, spit it out, say how horrible it was, they don't like it. The girls would drink it, completely finish the entire cup, wince as they're doing it. And then when they're asked, what did you think? They're like, oh, it's okay. And it wasn't until the researcher kept pushing them to tell them the truth. And then they asked, well, why didn't you just tell us you didn't like it and just stop drinking? They're like, well, I didn't want to hurt your feelings. And I thought that would be mean to do. So it's like this thing that we're taught as young kids: be nice girls, don't say no. You've got to please other people and put others' needs first, right? It's not good to put your own needs ahead. Don't need all of these things that we're taught. And it's from a young age. You would even drink salty lemonade.
Yeah. And interestingly enough, those aren't the same messages little boys are getting, right?
No,
So,
boys are taught, speak up, say what you think.
Yeah, we need to turn those tables. We're doing it slowly but surely.
Yeah, and I think this book is a great path to that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so too. We're going to be plugging this for a long time.
You will love Myth 8, where it's the chapter about boys are better than girls, because Mama Yip really steps up. She shoved my dad out of his seat and was like, no, I'm going to speak now. And I was like, whoa.
This is good. This is good.
Yeah. Well, and speaking of that, do you want to, I think it'd be helpful for our listeners to hear what the other myths are.
Yeah. So there are 8 different myths. And the first one is, my success will never be good enough for my parents. And that's because my parents expected me to be a doctor, lawyer, engineer, and I clearly was not that.
Yeah.
Myth 2 is, I failed my parents by not marrying a good Chinese partner. I married Greg. He's a white guy. And so on my wedding day, I actually broke down in tears the day before my wedding because I thought I disappointed my parents again. Myth 3, my parents must not love me because they never say it to me. Myth 4, I'll never be able to repay my parents for their sacrifices. Myth 5, I don't belong anywhere. Myth 6, I must be mentally tough and never ask for help. Myth 7, I don't deserve to spend money on myself. I need to save it. And then myth 8, which is what I shared, it's better to be a boy than a girl.
Yeah.
Wow.
Love that.
All the stories that I had.
Yeah.
And I suspect this is just, volume 1 because you've been around longer than 25 years, and this is a good 25 years worth of stuff. We want you to have volumes of these. This is great. People can learn from you. You know, you have this amazingly adorable little baby boy, and he's not a baby anymore, doggone it. He's growing up a multicultural child.
Mm-hmm.
And as he grows and begins to form his own stories, how do you envision his experiences being similar to and or different from yours? And how is that impacting you as a parent?
So I think one of the things that always sticks with me and that I'm constantly thinking about is people telling him that he doesn't belong. For me, it was clear cut. I'm 100% Chinese, and so it was you belong to the Chinese group, not to the American white group. But at the same time, when I went to visit China, they looked at me and they said, "You've got freckles. You're American. You're not Chinese." Right. So there was still this sense of I don't really belong anywhere, which is really what that chapter on I don't belong anywhere is about.
Yeah.
And when I look at Logan, he's going to have a different sort of struggle because he's mixed now. And from a lot of friends that I have who are mixed, they say you go to one group, they say, well, you're not X enough. And then you go to the other group that you should belong to, you're not X enough of this, right? And so there's really this, I don't belong anywhere. And I don't know who I am really. And that's been really something that I've been thinking about a lot. How do I want to raise him and what do I want to teach him? And as a parent, I realize I can't control what anybody else says to him. But what I can control is to teach him that he is enough just as he is.
Mm-hmm.
I want to teach him to learn to love, and that includes himself, to love, to be kind, to always try things, and that he gets to decide who he is and his identity. Nobody else gets to tell him. And that was actually something my dad told me when I was talking to him about that myth of I don't belong anywhere. I asked my parents, like, where do you think you belong? And what do you think about all the AAPI hate and the racism against Asians right now? And my dad said, the moment that I stepped on US soil, I was an American citizen. And nobody in America, except for Native Americans, can say that they are like this country and that nobody else belongs.
That's right.
So he was like, I belong in America. And that was actually very shocking for me because my parents raised me to be very Chinese. So I was like, oh, really? You think you're American? Oh, okay. But that's what I want to teach Logan is you get to decide that. You get to decide where you belong, just like Grandpa did.
Yeah. I love that. And that gives them such confidence. And I know you talk a lot about confidence, but when you have clarity for yourself, then not that it doesn't matter what other people think, but you come first. And I think that is just so important. Yeah.
Yeah. I want to teach him unconditional self-love.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So good.
You can always get it because it's yours.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
You don't have to
Yep.
rely on someone else for that. Yeah. So smart. Yeah. So when I was looking through the book, a passage that just jumped out at me that really felt impactful was way back towards the end of the book on page 340. And it really struck me because I feel like it's kind of core to this whole book and will help people kind of understand a little bit, I think, about maybe why you wrote the book and the impact you're hoping that it'll have. And so I wondered if you wouldn't mind, in your own voice, to read that passage on page 340.
Yeah. My conversations with my parents have taught me that I always have a choice. I can choose to try, or I can choose to give up. I can choose to belong, or I can choose to leave. I can choose to love myself, my parents, my children, my partner, and the lady that yelled at me to go back to my own country when I was just 3. Or I can choose to hold grudges and be angry. I choose to try. I choose to love. I am not at the mercy of my circumstances. I am at choice. As my dad said, we all need to come together. Humanity needs to come together. It's not just about being Asian or white or black. If we really want to do something different, we have to see ourselves as a larger community and come together versus separating. We need to love more. We even need to love the people who hate us and treat us badly. That's how we're going to change the world.
I love that. What does that passage mean to you?
Two big things. One, we're always at choice. We always have choice. Even if we don't think that there are choices, there are always choices. They might not be the choices we want to take, but they are there. That's one thing. The second thing is that we need more love and kindness in the world. We're all human beings. We all want the same thing. We all want love, belonging, dignity, all of that. And we need to treat each other with respect, with love, with kindness, and that could change the world.
No
That's the
question.
mic drop moment right
Yeah.
there. Mic drop moment. Oh, thank you for sharing that. And that leads us into our hope questions. And as our listeners know, we ask all of our guests these questions. We're in a quest to study hope and in that to help heal the world a little bit. And so, where do you see signs of hope in the world today?
I see signs of hope in how my parents have changed through these conversations. So my dad goes swimming every day now. I couldn't even get him to go walking before, and he started swimming over the summer. After these conversations were done, he started swimming, and then he recently asked me to get him an indoor swimming pass for a local swimming pool. And so he's actually packing up his bags and going swimming every day. Something has shifted. My mother, who in fourth grade was taken out of school, was always serious for most of her life. She didn't know how to play and be silly. And I think a big piece of it was because she wasn't allowed to be a child. And she actually jokes now. She can be playful. Not all the time, but it's a starting point.
Yeah.
And I think the biggest shift in our relationship that really has me seeing the hope is how honest and loving our relationship is. So, in full transparency, I'm going through the fertility treatments to see if those embryos that were stored many years ago are actually viable because we want a baby girl, and those are baby girls. In May, I had done an embryo transfer and it failed. And my dad called me to check in to see how things were going. I got so scared. My whole body just froze because I replayed like 6, 7, 8 years ago when my sister had a miscarriage, and my parents essentially said she must have done something wrong to have that miscarriage. Right. And it's part of the culture, part of, how my parents are. They always have to have that reason of, well, it's your fault. And so my body just clenched up when my dad asked me how things are going and when I will find out if there's a baby. And I thought about lying. I was like, maybe I could lie. Maybe I could tell him something. Maybe I could hold off on telling him. Like I went into this fight, flight, freeze mode. And then I was like, no, you know what? We had all these conversations. I need to be honest, and let's see what happens. So I said to him, Daddy, didn't work. No baby. And I was ready. My whole body was ready for whatever he said. And he responded and said, fate is a funny thing. Sometimes things work out, sometimes they don't. So don't blame yourself.
Wow.
My jaw dropped.
Wow.
I was like, who are you? What?
What a shift.
Wow.
Oh my
Well,
gosh.
then my mom got on the phone and I was like, okay, she's going to be the one criticizing me. Like, I'm ready again. And she said, Amy, are you crying? Don't cry. Do you need anything? Do you need me to come over there right now? And again, like jaw drop, like, who are you? And so it's these little moments and things that give me hope that things can change for the better, even these tough relationships with our parents.
Yeah. I love that. That's so heartwarming. It gives me hope. I love it. So, how do you sustain hope for yourself?
I feel like I'm always a very hopeful person. I think about the possibilities. So even with like right now, things are just when we started our conversation, I shared, all the things that are going wrong and and everything seems to be breaking. And I think it's the mental fitness work with Shirzad, the positive intelligence, that there's always a gift and opportunity no matter what. And I always keep that in mind. Even if it's not clear right now, there's a gift or opportunity here. I might not know what it is. And I think that is what helps me to keep hopeful that things will be better. There's something out there that will happen because of this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kidding.
True, very wise words. And how do you engage or inspire others to be hopeful?
Putting this
I was going to say, that's an easy one.
putting the book out there.
Yeah.
And I post a lot on social media, and I tend to post things that are hopeful. And I don't try to make myself seem like a perfect person, or, it doesn't happen in my life, because it does. But I do put out there the reality of things and that there's hope. And my goal is really to help people to find that same hope in their lives.
I can attest to that. I watch all of your posts. I read them. I do your surveys. I do whatever, because I think that I love the direction you go. You always talk about your feelings first, which I think is a great idea, because it warms people up to you. It's a heart connection. And then it's easier for people to be open with the way they feel about things. And I love that approach, and I think that you do that so well. And to me, that is very hopeful.
Thank you. Yeah, I always say I'm just real. I've taken all my armor off. What you see is what you get.
Yeah.
This is me.
Yeah, and I think that was such a brave thing, even writing the book and putting it out there, because it is vulnerable.
Yes.
And I love your courage. So our last hope question, if you could come up with one word that represents hope for you, what would that word be and why?
Play.
I love that.
Yeah.
And the reason is I see my kiddo at play all the time, and the way that he plays. And that's what I'm really thinking of, is this curiosity as he plays, this joy as he plays. He plays in all moments of his life. And I do think that as adults, we're way too serious about everything. And so if we can bring that joyous playfulness back into our lives, we would be such a happier people.
I totally agree.
Very good words to say right now. There's so much going on in the world, and I think people could really use it. They seem so, burnout and overwhelmed and everything, and that alone could take away some of that. It'd be beautiful.
Yeah.
So looking forward, what are you really excited about? What's the next thing on your agenda?
So I'm actually excited to start a podcast of my own.
Oh,
it's still
nice.
in the back of my head,
Yeah.
but what I really want to do is interview people who have gone on their own journey of having conversations with their parents and kind of share their journey, because so many stories that I hear from people about their relationship with their parents is these buzzwords, I feel like toxic relationship or narcissistic parents. And I really want to be able to showcase something different, the possibilities. And it goes alongside the book, right? Like, what could your relationship with your parents look like if you did the hard work?
What a great platform for that too. People do listen to podcasts, and more I hear. I mean, I've been talking to folks lately who are saying they've just picked it up. And I thought podcasts were on their way downhill, but they're not. They are just getting more and more fired up. So it's perfect. That's a great idea. I'll listen.
Yeah, and I love the fact that it's, like you said, showing examples or stories of when it is working. So that in itself is inspiring, and our relationship with our parents is really important, and so that in itself helps make a better world. I think when we can reconnect with our parents and heal those relationships.
Yeah, I think so too. I feel very fortunate that before my dad passed, like 13 years ago, that I had a couple of years with him where, we always got along, but I had a couple of years with him to really unpack the things that were important to him in his life and what molded his actions as he was growing up. And that it wasn't a conscious effort. It just was, I wanted to know, right? I wish I had done that better with my mom, before she got dementia. That would have been a great thing to do. So I love this. This is inspiring to me that, and I know a lot of people who could use this right now as they're navigating their relationships with their own parents as adults, right?
Yeah.
So, Amy, thank you so much for spending time with us today. I just am thrilled that you came. As a friend, I'm glad to see you. It's been a long time. And as a fellow coach, I love the direction you're going. I think the book is spectacular. We're going to be telling everybody about it. I will be plugging it from, pretty much here till the next book comes out. No pressure. But we're really glad to have had you here today. And thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. It's a pleasure being with both of you as always.
Thank you. Take care. What an amazing interview. I just loved catching up with her, and she's had so much success. And this book is just really fantastic. As she was talking about, impactful for AAPI immigrant parents and their children, but a read for everyone.
Yes.
A read for everyone. So let's keep that conversation going. If you have questions or comments about the show, you can find us on all our social media channels at lifting_leaders. We have so many exceptional podcast episodes coming up with more fantastic guests. So be sure to subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen. If you know someone who would find this episode inspiring, share it with them, text them, email them, or take a screenshot and share it on your Instagram and tag us at lifting_leaders. If you'd like to know more about us, our guests, or the show, please go to our website at liftingleaderspodcast.com. You'll find show notes there as well. If you're looking for help in developing your leaders or would like a growth opportunity yourself through coaching, please contact us through our website at www.liftingleaderspodcast.com. Thank you to Ari Chance Roberts for his technical support of our show. Finally, please take 30 seconds and follow us. It helps you because you never miss an episode, and it helps us because you never miss an episode. To follow us, go to the Lifting Leaders Podcast Show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, or wherever you listen. Then just tap the plus sign in the upper right-hand corner or click on follow. While you're there, if you'd be willing to give us a 5-star rating and review and share the episode with a friend, we'd be so grateful. Thanks, Trisha, for another fun episode.
Oh, thank you, Crystal. I'm just so grateful that we had this time with Amy, and I think our interaction just, it kind of warmed my heart, but it also gave me a lot of hope. It was great.
And thanks to you, our listeners. We appreciate you so much. Find ways every day to lift each other up. Have a fabulous week.
Take care.